Hello and welcome everyone. This is Peter Robinson here from Consensus, and today I'm going to talk about the Filecoin Retrieval architecture. So this is a visionary talk more than what we've currently got. There are other talks that are going to be about what we've got. So I'm joined with some people who've agreed to be my audience and ask lots of tricky questions. So they're going to ask whilst we go. I'll share my slides. Okay, so can everyone see my slides? Thumbs up?
Yeah.
Yep, all right, we're all good. Thank you. So the top right is the logo that we've come up with for Filecoin Retrieval. So you've got a dog there, a retrieval dog that is busily getting your files and getting them back to you quickly. And so that's our top level thought on how it's all going to work. You're going to be able to get your files quickly. So, the architecture we've got is actually secondary retrieval. So primary retrieval is essentially getting the files directly from the miners. So the miners are optimized for doing on-chain stuff and reliable storage, whereas secondary retrieval is all about high availability, off-chain sources, and really trying to have hyper-local distribution. So final leg. So you can imagine that you're in a city somewhere in the world and you don't want to be streaming some video or getting some file from the other end of the planet if you could be getting it locally. And so the idea is to come up with a way that you can have information available locally where possible, especially if it's something that's real, that a lot of other people have looked at and is very popular. You also want a market mechanism, so a way in a decentralized fashion of really being able to choose between who's going to provide you information so that buyers and sellers can find each other to create good deals and do it quickly. So low latency and massively scalable and market driven. So primary retrieval looks a little bit like this at the moment. You run a Lotus node and you say, hey, I know that you as a storage miner have my file. I want my file. Here's a CID. Please give me my file. And you get your file back. So that's what primary retrieval looks like. So secondary retrieval is really around discovering where the content is and caching the content locally and having the content where possible available at low latency. And also when you're trying to do a discovery, rather than having to go halfway around the world to do the discovery, maybe you can do that locally as well. And even if just the discovery is local, but the actual retrieval is at a distance, it'll still be overall much better. So the vision for Filecoin is to be able to store 2 to the 60 CIDs. And so that's not overall bytes, that's CIDs, where each CID is a PCID relating to a whole stack of content. And so you've got, 2 to the 60 is a big number, and it's more information than it's going to fit on one server or in one system. We're also looking at an incentivized system, so you need to have a way of promoting a healthy ecosystem by rewards and also penalties for bad behavior. So the overall big picture is this. So you have a retrieval client, which is a software library, and you can integrate that into applications. And so you're going to say, I want a piece CID and a CID within that, that piece of information. And so that's what you're going to be trying for. So you're going to be trying to work out where that piece is stored in the system and on which storage miners it's stored. And so associated with each storage miner, you'll have a retrieval provider. And so it's going to publish CID offers. So essentially that's going to be, I'm going to provide the content related to this piece CID for this price up until this date. And you might choose to have it just for a short period of time, or maybe you'll have it for a long period of time. So you could imagine you're going to say, here is the flat price for all content stored in this storage miner, but then maybe you might have a special, like if you go to your supermarket, sometimes you can get things at a cheaper price. So you can imagine you might do that as well. And so these CID offers, as I've just said, the cost of the content, when the offer expires, and also there may be something related to quality of service that you might provide. Now, we're still working on that quality of service metric and what that might be. So looking at the offer process, so with the current system with Filecoin, you do a bid, which says how much you're prepared to pay, have an ask, which says how much they want, then you cut a deal, and then you countersign the deal. And with the secondary market system, you're going to have a client says, hey, I want this PCID. Do you have any offers for it? To a gateway in the middle, and then they're going to get back to you. And so that gateway, then you've only got one round trip rather than 2 round trips. And the round trip is likely to be lower latency as well. So it should be quicker. So, and that's what the gateway does. So it has these retrieval offers that have been published to it. And so it'll respond to requests from clients to say, well, do you have this information about this content? And it'll say, yes, I've got these offers from the various providers for this content. But as well, you can imagine that you're going to have a whole stack of providers relating to a whole stack of miners, and they'll be publishing what CIDs they've got. But the gateways might choose not to store the content or the CID information for all providers. They just aren't going to be able to because there'll be too much. And so they'll have to choose. But when they do choose, or even if they don't choose to store information for one provider, a certain provider, they've still got to be part of what's called a DHT. And so if you can't find via standard discovery, then you're going to use a DHT. And I'm hoping that's the next slide after this. So for the DHT, it's not a typical DHT. So in IPFS, there's a peer-to-peer DHT. This is not the same thing at all. This is a single hop digital digest hash table. And so essentially, the idea is that we know that you've got stable nodes, and you've got known addresses for gateways, and you want to be able to offer single hop access to the DHT. And so what you do is you design the DHT so you've got redundancy across nodes. And this slide here gives you an idea. So you've got these a CID ring where you've got like all of the CIDs in a range, in the range that you can have. Now, obviously, normally CIDs are 32-bit, or rather 32-byte, 256 bits. And so you can imagine you've got all the content is in blue here. And you might have, say, a gateway, say 0x34. And so its gateway ID is 34. And so what it does is it will hold all of the CID information for a part of the overall ring. And so if I was at, say, gateway C6 over on the other side here, then if someone says, hey, I need information about where an offers for CID 39, then I know that gateway 34 is very close to 39, and so it should have information about that. So via a single hop, you can gain information and offers. So even if you've chosen not to hold via the standard publishing mechanism offers for CID 39, you will be able to locate offers based on the DHT. So as well, there's you can imagine that you might want to have a caching retrieval provider. And so the idea here is that you're not associated with a storage miner. So there's going to be payments for discovering the content, and there's payments for retrieving the content. But then you can imagine that you could say, look, I don't have a storage miner, or I do have a storage miner, but I don't have that content stored with me. But I can see that there are a lot of people who are interested in that content and are prepared to pay for it. So what I'll do is I'll set up one of these caching providers, and I will retrieve the information from the storage miner and then cache it locally. So then when people ask my gateway, hey, can you tell me someone who's got it? I can say, look, here's the content and I can give it to you at this price. And so maybe you could undercut the other providers. And doing that is good for customers because it will mean that they're more likely to find information closer to them, so less latency, and at a cheaper price. And the storage miners are still getting money for retrieval, and they're getting money for storage. So it's all good. Payment brokers is a concept where at the moment you've got to have a payment channel to pay someone. And so you can imagine the retrieval client, or the application that uses the retrieval client, has payment channels set up with the gateways that it wants to use, and maybe some of the providers. And so you can imagine, though, that say you want some content and it's with a retrieval provider that you don't have a payment channel with, then you would have to set up a new payment channel, which would require an on-chain transaction, and it's going to be really slow. And you're going to have to put money into that payment channel, which is going to have to be more than you're going to be paying. So at least as much, but maybe more, just to make sure it all goes through. So the thought is that you could have a payment broker, and the payment broker could be able to pay and have payment channels with everyone. And you could choose to use that payment broker. Another possibility is using a retrieval gateway as a payment broker as well. And yet another thought that I've got is you could have a subscription service. And so the idea here is that not everyone's got Phil. And you might say, look, I'm going to pay $20 a month to some company, and they will then give me Phil, essentially, allow me to do retrieval requests on my behalf. And so I'll be able to say have a certain quota. And so that would allow you to use, large companies like, I don't know, Dropbox or one of these other competitors. They might choose to have a subscription service, or you could have Amazon might even do it. Who knows? I mean, a cloud service company or another SaaS sort of company could choose to integrate this as part of their system, or it could come from new entrants into the market. And another thing with subscription, you could imagine a wealthy individual might decide that, well, look, if the content that you're after is, I don't know, the web archive, I'm going to provide that for free. And so anyone who wants to look at the web archive, it's stored on Filecoin, and I'm going to provide free access to everyone. So you can imagine this retrieval client, it could be in multiple languages as well. And I think having it in JavaScript will help with integration into web browsers and for some mobile app development. But also Java and Kotlin is needed if you want to go into Android and be more native with your integration. And Swift is required if you're going to be on iOS. So the thought would be that you would have this retrieval client library available everywhere that people write applications that use files. And at the moment, we're just looking at content discovery, but there's really no reason why you can't do file retrieval, file storage, field transfer, and be able to connect across Ethereum and Filecoin. And as well, when you're storing files, wouldn't it be good if all of the duplication across different storage miners happened transparently? So you could imagine some sort of RAID storage system where you are using multiple nodes and have redundancy across the nodes. And of course, finally, you can imagine that rather than just getting stuff that you know about already, you might want to be able to do complex searches. So essentially a web search, but across all of the content that's in Filecoin. And so that's my quick visionary overview of where things could go. Obviously, we're a long way from a lot of that. And in fact, we're up to part 1 of the first part of the secondary retrieval market implementation. But there'll be another talk that'll talk about what we've actually achieved thus far and where we're sitting in this overall grand plan. So what questions do you have, if any? Yeah.
How do you see secondary Filecoin retrieval sitting in, I guess, competition with, say, traditional web CDNs and also IPFS pinning services? Because it's not really clear in my head, like when you would use one or the other system.
Yes. So a content delivery network, IPFS or Filecoin, when to use one, when to use the other. So, I mean, I guess with Filecoin, you're paying for your content to be stored. So you have certainty, or far more certainty. So obviously, at the end of the day, a Filecoin storage miner could have a fire and burn to the ground, and obviously your files could be gone. That could happen. But then if you're storing across multiple storage miners, that's far, your probability goes down dramatically. In IPFS, you could just one day decide that you don't want to be storing IPFS anymore. Whereas in Filecoin, if you chose to just turn off your computer, you're going to get fined. You've got some stake, money in the game, and you will lose that. As far as CDNs compared to Filecoin, I think the goal is to have the storage in Filecoin much cheaper in the longer term. And I guess you're getting all the decentralized properties of Filecoin that you're not getting in CDNs. So that's my thought on that. Does that make sense? And do you agree, or what do you?
I'm like I said, I still don't really know how it works out in terms of. I think Filecoin is pretty. Like you have it proves the storage is there. So that's a very, very interesting layer. I don't see anybody really replicating that. It's the sort of middle in between piece, like how do you get the data there to large numbers of people, perhaps, or yeah, and it's the distribution part of it that I could see, like if for like a web use case, there's a mature ecosystem of CDN providers. But of course, as the person who uploaded the data, then I also have to pay the CDN bill. So I could see if I don't want to pay the CDN bill, I want the downloaders to pay the CDN. Then this might be where this type of thing fits in. And IPFS pinning solutions, like I could pin on multiple providers, but I'm not really sure if any of them have a business model. Like if 1 million people were to download from Pinata or something, that's probably not what they're set up to do. So they would probably republish onto a CDN for that sort of a use case. And whereas I could see with a secondary retrieval market, maybe I just put it on the miners and then somehow independently of me, there's people willing to pay money to download it, which I think that's a tough one because like right now people don't pay to download stuff generally. So, but I imagine maybe for larger data sets, that's the case.
Yeah, well, maybe a subscription service may end up being the model. Yeah, subscription services may be where people don't need to pay as well, potentially. So Nelson, you're a miner. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was wondering about the retrieval gateway, because from a hardware standpoint, as a miner, to really be able to seal sectors or store data, prove it, you do have to have a pretty robust mining cluster. If a retrieval gateway provider is going to occasionally bring data over and store it closer to the client, are they going to be required to be proving as well and sealing?
No, they're not. But people won't want to use them if they say they've got content and they don't end up having content. But yes, they're not having to prove anything. But the thing is that you'll have your client will have a set of gateways that you've got payment channels set up with that you're decided that you're trusting. And if they start breaching your trust by saying, hey, you can get this content here, or say, I've got a provider with me here and you can get that content from me, then it's going to everyone won't trust it anymore, if it keeps on breaking its promises. So that's more a reputation-based thing. And then obviously it's incentivized to keep up its end of the bargain, and be able to only specify providers that really do provide content, because it's incentivized to locate content for you. And the idea as well for the gateways is that, you should be trying to be able to have them run on far more commodity hardware than the miners. It should be something relatively simple, because you want to be able to have it that all of us here with, an old, or maybe not an old desktop PC, but, a computer in our garage or whatever could be running a local miner or local gateway rather for our suburb. And maybe we've got a petabyte disk or something like that, or, multi-terabyte disk there, and we're storing certain pieces of content. And that would be the goal, I think.
So their requirements for bandwidth, download upload speed, is more paramount than say sealing capacity.
Yeah. If you were going to be a provider, so a caching provider as well as a gateway, you're going to have really good bandwidth. If you're just a gateway, then you're not dealing with content, you're only dealing with PCIDs. And so, so that, reduces the bandwidth requirements by, I don't know, maybe 6 orders of magnitude or something. So yeah, that's much better. Zhenyang or Shuyao, did you learn anything new? Or have you seen this slide deck?
Just thinking, which one of us can hold a longer not talking? No, I think this was a bit complicated to someone who's not technical. So I'm gonna refrain, and then I think Zhenyang, you can ask better questions.
Yeah, well, to be honest, this is, well, nothing too new to me, because it's what I'm doing pretty much every day. I guess a question would be, how the whole reputation system actually works. That's one. I guess that's only one from me. Yeah.
For sure. And so just so everyone knows, so Zhenyang is in the weeds of the code right at the moment, implementing gateway and retrieval client in Golang. And so the reputation system is there. It's just not something you've hit yet. And yeah, reputation's hard. I can say that, because you can't rely on someone else's reputation, someone else saying, hey, I trust Shuyao. you can't do that. You've got to base your own reputation of Xu Yao from yourself. So equally, if even if you trust Xu Yao, but she says Nelson is trustworthy or untrustworthy, you can't rely on that. So you have to work out mechanisms for doing trust based on what you do yourself. And so, it has been thought through, and it'll be something that we're actually hitting in POC 2, which is what we start next week. So anyway, there'll be another video which I'll do sometime in the next day or so, which will talk about the various repos that we've available. Another one which will talk about what we've delivered in POC 1, and I'm sure there'll be a few more that we'll come up with. And maybe what we'll do as well, Xu Yao, is work out a non-technical talk about Filecoin retrieval to say what we've actually delivered and what we plan to deliver. Because I mean, that's very important too. We need to talk to the broad audience.
Can we use like our dog logo friend, make a small animation, be like, oh, this is actually how you retrieve? I'm joking.
Yeah. I'll let someone else do that one. All right. So I'll end it here. So thank you everyone for joining the call, and I'll post that to the video channel on YouTube pretty soon. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.